serious cases in the U.S., the Ohio teen's cold case is filled with contradictions and cover-ups.
What really happened to Kurt Sova? That question has hung in the air for more than 4 decades, and it still doesn't sit right. This case stays murky because too many people circle around it, including law enforcement figures whose actions raised serious eyebrows. How any of them connect to Kurt's disappearance is frustratingly hard to lock down. Kurt was 17 years old when he went to a Halloween party in Newburgh Heights, Ohio, and never made it back home. 5 days later, his body was found in a ravine, yet the medical examiner said he'd been gone for only about 36 hours. That gap raises one loud question. Where was he for those missing days, and who was he really with? My name's Andrew, and you're locked in for another episode of Every Town. Thanks for pulling up, because today we're digging into one of Ohio's strangest and most unsettling mysteries. This is a case that's haunted investigators and true crime fans for over 40 years, and it still sparks debate. Let's break it down together and step straight into the mystery of Kurt Sova. Kurt Eugene Sova was the baby of his family, born March 8, 1964. He was the youngest of 4 brothers, raised in a working-class home in Slavic Village, a tight-knit Cleveland neighborhood known for its deep Czech and Polish roots. His father, Ken, worked long hours just to keep the lights on, while his mother, Dorothy, ran the household and kept the boys in check. It wasn't easy, but it built structure. By every account, Kurt was the kind of teen parents brag about. Athletic, creative, and naturally funny. He had a knack for impressions, loved clowning his brothers, and would crack jokes at the worst timing just to get laughs. Kurt played football, spent time fishing, and carried that smooth, easygoing energy that made people feel safe around him. He rocked long brown hair parted down the middle, a straight-up early 80s look that fit him perfectly. By 1981, the Sova family had just settled into a new home in Newburgh Heights, a small working-class suburb just south of Cleveland. New house meant a fresh start, new faces, new school, new routines, the whole reset. Kurt was 17 and a junior at the time, and if anyone could handle a transition like that without slipping up, it was him. The Sova household ran on simple, clear rules. Kurt had to be home by 10:30 on school nights, maybe 11 if his parents knew exactly where he was, and plans shifted. If something changed, he called no excuses. That rule wasn't negotiable, but it was never an issue either.
So, he tried to follow all.
Ken and Dorothy weren't hovering parents. They just understood their neighborhood, knew the line between harmless teenage fun and real danger, and trusted Kurt to see that line too. For 17 straight years, that trust stayed solid and unbroken, until one night changed everything. Friday, October 23rd, 1981. Here's what's confirmed about that Friday. Kurt skipped school, which on its own wasn't shocking for a teenager, even one with a clean track record. But what followed wasn't typical skipping class behavior. At some point that day, Kurt convinced a stranger outside a liquor store to buy him a bottle of Everclear. If you don't know what that is, that's probably for the best. We're talking 190 proof grain alcohol, so strong it's banned in multiple states. This wasn't light beer or casual drinks. This was extreme stuff. Kurt spent the afternoon at his girlfriend's house drinking, and by the time evening rolled around, he was already far past just tipsy. That's when his friend Sam Carroll showed up. The plan was to hit a Halloween party at a duplex on Harvard Avenue. The place belonged to a woman named Susan, though some reports say Debbie, who lived there with her brother Clayton and another roommate. The crowd that night skewed older than Kurt and Sam, and most of the people there were complete strangers to Kurt, which makes what happened next even more unsettling. That alone should have been a warning sign, but let's be real, 17-year-olds aren't famous for thinking things through. What happened inside that house is where everything starts to get messy. Stories clash, memories don't line up, and the truth slips through the cracks. What most witnesses agree on is this: Kurt kept drinking. A lot. Some people said he got loud and out of control. Others said he looked sick and could barely stand. The truth was probably somewhere in between, but either way, Sam knew his friend needed air. It was cold that night, late October in Newburgh Heights, the kind of chill that cuts through you. Kurt and Sam stepped outside and stood in the dark for 20 to 30 minutes while Kurt tried to get his balance back. Sam stayed close, watching him, trying to do the right thing. Then Sam made a decision that would stick with him forever. He went back inside to grab their jackets. When Sam came back out, Kurt was gone. No footsteps, no sounds, no explanation. Just gone, like the night swallowed him whole. That moment marks the last time anyone would openly admit to seeing Kurt Sova alive. Saturday morning came and went with no sign of Kurt. Dorothy, his mother, wasn't someone who panicked easily, but something felt wrong in her gut. Kurt might have skipped class before or pushed curfew once in a while, but he never disappeared without calling. Not ever. As the hours dragged on and the silence stretched, fear took hold. By mid-afternoon, his father Ken was driving familiar routes, parks, schools, friends' houses, anywhere Kurt might have ended up. Dorothy stayed home by the phone, dialing one number after another, her voice tightening every time she asked the same question: "Have you seen Kurt?" But no one had. By Sunday, fear turned into desperation. The Sova family filed a missing person report with Cleveland police. Dorothy printed flyers with Kurt's photo and covered the neighborhood, storefronts, telephone poles, gas stations, anywhere eyes might land. By then, she'd heard about the Halloween gathering on Harvard Avenue. She drove straight there, knocked on the door, and demanded answers. Missy, one of the roommates, answered the door and claimed there hadn't been any party at all. Her excuse was simple. She knew there had been underage drinking and didn't want trouble coming back on her. She said she'd never seen Kurt before and insisted she couldn't help. But Dorothy wasn't the kind of mother who backed down easily. She kept pushing, kept asking questions, and kept knocking on doors around town until cracks started to show. Before long, a local pizza delivery driver told Dorothy a very different story. He said he'd delivered food to that exact address on Friday night during a party. When confronted with that, the woman finally folded. Yes, there had been a party, and yes, she recognized Kurt. The lie was out in the open, and it made no sense to deny a grieving mother who was only searching for her missing son. Later, Ken returned to the duplex himself, determined to see things firsthand. He knocked, asked to look around, and by then the people inside knew the situation was serious, and they'd already been caught lying. They let him in. Inside, Ken found something chilling: Kurt's jacket sitting right there in the house. But before the family could dig any deeper, the situation took a sharp turn. Newburgh Heights Police Chief James F. Lucas stepped in and ordered the family to back off immediately. He warned them that if they came around again, it would be considered harassment. Technically, maybe that's how it was framed, but let's be honest, how far would any parent go to find their missing child? In that light, it doesn't feel like harassment at all. While the Sova family was pushed away, their search continued elsewhere. Then things got even stranger in Newburgh Heights, the kind of detail that sounds unreal unless it's written in police records. It was Monday, October 26th, 3 days after Kurt vanished. His friend David Trusnick was driving through town when he spotted a kid on the sidewalk who looked just like Kurt, walking next to another teenager. David pulled over, ready to offer a ride, and that's when a van suddenly appeared. According to David, when he called out to the kid on the sidewalk, Kurt looked up and shouted one single name: Franco, before David could even process what was happening. In seconds, both teens sprinted toward a van, jumped inside, and it peeled off down the street. At the time, David didn't think much of it. He didn't even know Kurt was missing yet. If he had, maybe he would have followed that van. Maybe he would have caught a license plate. Maybe history would look very different today. But none of that happened. and the moment slipped away forever. And somehow, that wasn't even the strangest part yet. That same day, a man walked into Slavic Village Records, a small neighborhood shop with Kurt's missing flyer taped to the front window. He pointed directly at the photo and told the manager they would find the boy dead in 2 days, and that no one would ever know why. The store manager, Judy Oros, remembered every word because it shook her to the core. The man looked unwell.
Back in February of 2020, investigators tried to crack the case in a new way. 19 investigators traveled to Chicago, where hundreds of citizen detectives came together to try to solve Kurt's case through crowdsourcing.
Possibly homeless or deeply disturbed, but his warning was way too specific to ignore. The next morning, Judy showed up to open the shop and found a bouquet of flowers sitting outside the door with a handwritten note. The message read, and this is a direct quote, "Roses are red, the sky is blue, they found him dead, and they'll find you too." That wasn't a prank, that was a threat, and it landed hard. Police eventually tracked the man down and learned he was a transient from Detroit. He was clearly unstable, but had no provable connection to Kurt or anyone in Newburgh Heights. With no crime they could charge him for, police let him go, and he left town immediately. No charges, no follow-up, and no answers. And just like he said, 2 days later, Kurt Sova's body was found. At that point, fear had fully settled into the community. Too many warnings lined up, too many strange encounters stacked back to back. What should have been random moments now felt connected, like pieces of a puzzle nobody wanted to finish. And once Kurt was found, the questions didn't fade, they multiplied. The Aura frame fixes that problem instantly. I've been using one at home, and it's easily become the cleanest way to keep everyone connected without the hassle. Old photos, short video clips, moments that usually stay buried in your phone, finally get the spotlight they deserve. With Aura, those memories actually live somewhere you can see them every day. What really makes it clutch is how fast everything comes together. You can preload photos before the frame even ships, then keep adding more anytime, anywhere. Just open the Aura app, connect the frame to Wi-Fi, and boom, everything shows up right there. Right now, you can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com and get $35 off. Aura's best-selling Carver matte frame was ranked #1 by Wirecutter. Just use promo code EVERYTOWN at checkout. That's auraframes.com. Promo code EVERYTOWN. This deal is exclusive, frames sell out fast, and holidays sneak up quick. So don't wait. Supporting the show helps keep stories like this alive. Now back to what happened next. Wednesday, October 28th, 1981, started like any other fall afternoon. 3 neighborhood boys were cutting through a ravine behind a furniture warehouse, a spot kids used to hang out, skip rocks, or just kill time after school. But that day wasn't normal at all. Lying face up in a shallow puddle was the body of 17-year-old Kurt Sova. His arms were stretched wide in what investigators would later describe as a crucifixion-like position. He was wearing the same bright yellow t-shirt his father remembered so clearly, the color standing out sharply against the dull gray ravine. One shoe was missing and later found 12 feet away, wedged between rocks. What made it even more disturbing was the location. Kurt was found just about 500 yards from the duplex where the Halloween party happened and less than a mile from his own home. Yet somehow, after days of searching by police, friends, and neighbors, no one had found him there before. Or maybe he hadn't been there at all until recently. That possibility hit even harder because Ken Sova had personally searched that exact stretch of land days earlier and found nothing. Ken Sova was absolutely certain his son's body had not been there before. This wasn't some hidden stretch of deep woods. The ravine was open, easy to access, and used regularly as a shortcut by people moving through town. It was right there in plain sight. If Kurt had been there earlier, someone would have seen him, especially Ken, who had already searched that exact area himself. Then came the autopsy, and instead of answers, it only deepened the confusion. Dr. Lester Adelson, the chief deputy coroner, estimated that Kurt had been dead for only 24 to 36 hours, not 5 days, not even 3. That meant Kurt had been alive for most of the time he was missing. That finding gave serious weight to David's story about seeing Kurt get into that van days after he vanished. So the question got louder. Where was Kurt during those missing days, and what actually happened to him? Dr. Adelson couldn't identify a clear cause of death. Kurt hadn't been stabbed, shot, or beaten. There was no major trauma anywhere on his body. His blood alcohol level was measured at 0.11%, showing he'd been drinking, but nowhere near fatal for a healthy 17-year-old. In the end, the coroner labeled it an instantaneous physiological death, meaning his body simply stopped functioning. The manner of death was first ruled a probable accident. Later, that ruling was quietly changed to a single word: undetermined. A healthy teenager had died without explanation, and no one could say why. If you ever wanted a real-world example of how not to handle a suspicious death, what happened next in Newburgh Heights says it all. The police response wasn't just messy, it crossed into negligence. Detectives appeared irritated that the Sova family kept asking questions and conducting their own search. There was tension, clear resentment, and a sense that the family should step aside and stay quiet. That friction helps explain why no crime scene photos were taken, why evidence wasn't properly collected or preserved, and why key witnesses were never formally interviewed. From the very start, this case felt mishandled, and those early failures would haunt the investigation for decades to come. When the Cleveland Police Department offered help, more resources, more experience, Newburgh Heights shut it down immediately. No backup, no outside review, nothing. If you're wondering why this case never added up, this part starts to explain it. The investigation was handed to Lieutenant Robert Karras, a man who would later be convicted on 76 counts of drug trafficking, along with multiple civil rights violations. This wasn't rumor or gossip. This was proven in court. Karras was known for forging painkiller prescriptions and, in one documented incident, chaining suspects to hot radiators. And somehow, this was the person leading the investigation into a teenager's unexplained death. Above him sat Police Chief James Lucas, the same chief who had warned the Sova family to stay away from the party house. He would later be banned from police work altogether. So the people in charge weren't just questionable. They were eventually removed from law enforcement entirely. That alone should make anyone pause. But the most disturbing failure came from a woman named Angeline Reddix. Angeline lived near the ravine where Kurt's body was eventually found. In the days before the discovery, she told friends she had seen 2 young men dragging what looked like an unconscious teenage boy toward that exact spot. One detail stood out clearly. One of his feet was bare. At the time, she assumed it was just drunk kids messing around and didn't think much more of it. After Kurt's body was found, Angeline wanted to go to police. Her husband urged her not to get involved, telling her to stay out of it. Nearly a year later, by pure chance, she ran into Ken Sova and told him everything she had seen. Ken immediately passed the information to the Newburgh Heights Police Department, and then nothing happened. They never interviewed her. They never followed up. They didn't even return his calls. So let's slow this down and look at the timeline. Kurt vanished Friday night. His body wasn't found until Wednesday afternoon, but the coroner said he'd only been dead since Monday, maybe Tuesday at the latest. That leaves days completely unaccounted for. Where was Kurt during that time? And how does a scared, intoxicated 17-year-old not find a single way to call home? Those unanswered gaps are exactly where this case falls apart. The only solid lead came in the very early hours of Wednesday morning, just hours before Kurt's body was found. Around 3 a.m., The phone rang at the Sova house. It was Susan, one of the women who hosted the Halloween gathering, and she sounded shaken. She said she believed there was a teenage boy sleeping in her basement. She thought it might be Kurt, and Ken Sova didn't hesitate for a second. He got in his car and drove straight to the duplex. But when Ken arrived, the basement was empty. No boy, no explanation. A cot was still set up, blankets rumpled and pushed aside, clear signs that someone had been there recently. Whoever it was, they were gone by the time Ken walked in. That moment only added another layer of confusion to a case already full of holes.
I don't believe it was accidental, but I'm also not 100% sure that somebody purposely murdered him. My honest opinion is Kurt made some bad decisions that night.
In the days that followed, Dorothy Sova formed her own theory, and it was hard to ignore. She believed Kurt may have died at or shortly after the party, possibly from alcohol-related causes or something even more serious. In her mind, panic set in, and those involved hid his body in the basement for days before finally dumping him in the ravine. That theory explained a lot. The delayed timeline, Susan's late-night call, and why Kurt never reached out to his family. But that explanation still didn't cover everything. It didn't explain why David Trusnick saw a boy who looked exactly like Kurt climbing into that van days later while shouting the name Franco. That detail kept blowing the case wide open. And here's where it gets even murkier. The identity of Franco has never been confirmed. Some investigators speculated it could have been Craig Franco, a 20-year-old from Cleveland who was shot and killed during a robbery just 6 weeks after Kurt disappeared. If there was any connection, it ended with him, or maybe David was mistaken. After more than 40 years, even David admits he can't be completely sure of what he saw that morning. And so those 3 missing days, the final silent stretch of Kurt Sova's life, remain just as unexplained now as they were back in 1981. But the story doesn't stop there. Just when Newburgh Heights began trying to move forward, tragedy struck again. 3 months later, on February 1st, 1982, another teenage boy was found dead in another ravine. This one was just 2.5 miles from where Kurt had been discovered. His name was Eugene Martin, and he was only 13 years old. The similarities between the 2 cases were impossible to ignore, and the town would soon realize this nightmare wasn't over yet. The similarities between the 2 cases were impossible to ignore. Both boys vanished for several days before being found. Both were discovered in ravines, and both were missing their right shoe. That detail alone made people stop and look twice. Even stranger, Kurt and Eugene actually knew each other. They lived just 1 block apart in the same tight neighborhood in Newburgh Heights. According to Eugene's autopsy, his cause of death was listed as a fall into the ravine. But just like Kurt's case, investigators couldn't determine whether it was an accident or something more deliberate. The investigation barely scratched the surface, and once again it came down to the same problem: the police in charge. Questions weren't pushed, and answers weren't chased. So the big question stayed hanging. Were these deaths connected, or was this just a chilling coincidence? Online, especially in true crime spaces, people floated the idea of a copycat situation. On the surface, the similarities were loud, but beyond that, there was no hard proof tying the 2 cases together. Police treated Eugene's death as completely separate. No real effort was made to link the cases, and both investigations were quietly shelved. Over time, they faded from public focus, but not from the minds of those still digging. For more than 40 years, investigators, journalists, and amateur sleuths have tried to piece together what really happened to Kurt Sova. Some theories feel grounded, others drift into darker territory that makes people uncomfortable. The accident theory suggests Kurt, heavily intoxicated, wandered away from the party and died from exposure or injury. It also raises the idea that other teens may have found him and panicked, hiding his body for days before leaving it in the ravine. Then there's the murder theory. That version points to Kurt being killed at or shortly after the party, either by someone he knew or someone he crossed paths with that night. His body was hidden and later dumped once pressure started building, and looming over everything is the corruption theory, the idea that mistakes, misconduct, or intentional blind spots kept the truth buried. No matter which angle you look at, this case refuses to sit still, and the unanswered questions keep piling up. There's one theory that points the finger straight back at Newburgh Heights itself. In that version, Kurt may have seen something he wasn't supposed to see, possibly connected to drug activity tied to Officer Robert Lucas. If that theory holds, then Kurt's death wasn't an accident at all. It was a silencing, a cover-up hiding in plain sight. In December 2019, Newburgh Heights Police Chief John Majoy announced the case was being reopened. This time, they partnered with Tiffin University's criminal justice program and leaned heavily on the meticulous notes Dorothy Sova had kept for decades. Every detail, every memory, every unanswered question was put back under the microscope. Investigators launched a full review of every piece of evidence they could find. The renewed effort grabbed national attention in February 2020 when Kurt's case was featured at the CrimeCon CrowdSolve event in Chicago. Hundreds of amateur investigators teamed up with professionals to rework timelines and test fresh theories. Even actress Selena Gomez and her mother took part, helping sort through files and witness statements. For a moment, it felt like Kurt's story might finally reach the ending his family had waited over 40 years for. But time doesn't play fair. Witnesses pass away or disappear, memories fade, physical evidence gets lost to history. Investigators chased every solid lead and ruled out multiple old suspects, including Sam Carroll, the friend who had been with Kurt that night. Sam passed 2 polygraph tests decades apart and was officially cleared before his death from an overdose. Beyond that, there was nothing left to chase. Today, the case sits in what police call dormant status, not closed, just waiting for new evidence, new testimony, or the one person who knows more than they've ever said. After 44 years, hoping for that kind of breakthrough feels heavy. What really happened to Kurt Sova on that cold October night in 1981? The truth is, no one can say for sure, and that silence is the hardest part of all. So that's gonna wrap things up for this episode of Every Town. I really appreciate you taking the time to ride with me through this story, because cases like this deserve to stay talked about. If this episode hit you in any way, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it so more people can hear Kurt's story. We've also got new merch out right now, so if you want to rep the show and stand out in your town, go check out the store. The link is down in the description. Don't miss it. Thanks again for the support. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one.